So this morning we have been joined by Mr. Bolaji Abdullahi, who is the Interim National Publicity Secretary of the African Democratic Congress. He's right here in Abuja Studios. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning.
It's been a while.
Yeah, quite
You've been quite quiet on the political scene. Has it been intentional?
Yeah, deliberate. I left PDP last October. And after that, I decided to go in a period of hibernation.
Hibernation? Why?
Yeah, because, you need time to reflect. I had been in the political scene for a period of 20 years before then. And a lot of things have happened in between. So I needed time to relax, write my book,
Yes, you are, right?
Yes, write my book, and which is coming up soon. So then the coalition conversation happened, and I was invited, and I like what I was hearing, so here we are.
Well, this is what people have, they're looking at the coalition right now, and they're wondering whether this is an amalgamation of strange bedfellows, as they had seen in 2014, that people who, did not necessarily agree, but had a common interest, which was to remove a government out of power, then we figure out the rest later. It seems like that is what is now happening again with the African Democratic Congress.
Well, I would say you are totally wrong, but there is a lot more to it than just that. Politics is always about strange bedfellows who have found ways to stay together. In fact, one of the strengths of PDP over the years was that it created accommodation for a broad spectrum of people with different tendencies, the philosophy actually was to include as many people as possible. If you remember at the initial stage, some people say, oh, we didn't want to deal with pro-Abacha politicians, and they say, no, if you don't want to deal with pro-Abacha politicians, then you have no place in PDP, because PDP wanted to include everybody. Now, so I'm saying in essence that political party building is always about strange people who have agreed to do certain things. Now, the question is whether the coalition is just about taking power in 2027. I think it goes beyond that. For me personally, when I said I was invited and I liked what I was hearing, I could see a new vision. I could see a possibility that transcends just 2027. I could see people who are conscious that they are probably running out of time, and there's a need to begin to build the next generation of Nigerian politicians who are committed to certain ideals. And that appealed to me, that interested me, because it's like my age, I'm 56, it's like I straddle both
the old and
the new. So I like the gateway in between. So, and that fascinated me. And the kind of conversations I've been hearing since then was not just about grabbing power. Of course, we talk about rescuing the country. That's what political parties will do when you operate in a country like ours, but it's not just about power grabbing.
So what would you say has been the ultimate failure of the PDP and why you left?
No, I left because of my own local consideration, which I'm not going to talk about here. But
why?
I don't want to talk about it because I need to preserve some relationships. And if you need to preserve relationships, there are some things you don't talk about in public, right? And respect for the history that took 20 years to build, so I don't want to talk about that. If you ask me about PDP generally, then I can give my opinion.
Yes.
I think PDP became its own problem. If you remember, as recent as 2007 or so, PDP was so dominant that I think the national secretary at the time was talking about PDP ruling for 60 years. Everybody had to be in PDP. If you wanted to play, you had to be in PDP.
Hubris set in.
Hubris set in. Internal contradictions, because what people could do in other smaller parties, everybody brought it into PDP. And you knew at that time that if you got the PDP ticket, it's more or less like you've won the election. So the battle for emerging as the party's candidate at any level was so fierce that the party began to implode because of this tension. Then we found ourselves in situations that it now became a party of big men, alienating the membership. So all this led to, and they lost the election. The PDP lost the election for the first time in 2015. PDP was not built to play opposition. PDP was built to govern. So it found itself in a strange place in 2015 as an opposition party. And then everything began to spiral downwards from then. Then came this administration, and PDP remained like the potential challenger for power again. So I don't know if it was deliberate policy of this government or it's something that some people just decided to undertake by themselves to undermine or take advantage of the internal contradictions in the opposition parties and to make sure they are no longer in it. But what is happening today is a situation that, and I say that this not because I'm in ADC, that Nigerians have ADC to thank for coming on the scene. Why? We were inexorably heading towards a one-party state, essentially. The last time we came close to it, I had one governor, I think Governor Abdullahi in Osho, saying that he's not going to leave PDP, but he's going to back President Tinubu. I mean, the last time we came close to anything like that was during Abacha, when people would be in one party and be supporting the candidate of another. It has never happened before. So for whatever it is worth, ADC is giving Nigerians alternative. So when we arrive 2027, Nigerians can look at the APC and say, are we happy with them? Okay, let them continue. If we are not happy, then what alternative? It's dangerous if there are no alternatives.
Well, clearly, you are not letting the APC now, the APC ruling party, breathe in space. And it does appear that you are now beginning to challenge, which is what an opposition is supposed to do. When facts or whenever it is there are releases from a ruling party, we ought to hear the perspective of the opposition on this. Sometimes we hear occasionally from the PDP, sometimes it's the Labour Party, but it does appear that the ADC is trying its best to be consistent on matters that affect policy and also affects, in this instance, statistics. So you've spoken up on this issue of the rebasing of the Nigerian economy. Now we understand that Nigeria is 4th in Africa. It is 40th largest economy in the world. The aim has always been for Nigeria to be amongst the first 20 economies in the world. It doesn't appear that, well, we've made some progress considering the challenges that we have faced. But here you are saying that GDP doesn't fill empty stomachs. Why did you feel the need to say this? Because some people say that this is just a statistic. This is just a realignment of what it is that is our potential, where it is that we need to focus more to see where we can build the areas that are actually productive in the economy, that maybe the government can encourage a lot more to do, to be more productive, and maybe we can eventually meet our goal. Why did the ADC feel a need to speak up on this particular rebasing of Nigeria's GDP?
Well, there are two issues here. And when we said what we said about the rebasing, about GDP essentially, we are not saying anything new. When the rebasing was announced, rebasing of the economy was announced around 2014, during President Jonathan's administration. That was when Nigeria's GDP climbed to #1 in the African continent. These questions were raised by various analysts and economists. I'm not an economist. But I know that as far back as 2008, economists all over the world had begun to question whether GDP was sufficient as a measure of productivity, as a measure of national economy, or whether it truly reflects the true state of the economy of a country. French president at the time, Nicolas Sarkozy, actually commissioned a team led by two leading Nobel economists, Amartya Sen and Joseph Stiglitz. And when they submitted their report, The report was eventually published into a book, and every serious student of development economist must have read that book. Mismeasuring our lives, why GDP is not enough. So it's not a new conversation, and that report was launched at the time of global economic crisis. The point they are making is that GDP tends to overlook the lived realities of the people. In other words, you can have economic growth that leaves the majority of the people behind. So it doesn't reflect unemployment. It doesn't reflect real per capita income. It doesn't reflect inequality. So when we talk about GDP, and GDP is rooted in some Keynesian economics. So we're now saying that don't celebrate it's statistics, but don't celebrate it as if it's a mark of progress. It is not a mark of progress. Because today the truth is that 90% of Nigerians are still in poverty. Nigeria is still the most unequal country in the world. And there are structural issues that need to be addressed that you are not addressing. Nigeria does not even have the infrastructure for social intervention. When we do social intervention as government, as you see in the last administration, it's still ad hoc. Trader money, this, that, we still don't have the infrastructure to deliver it, right? And the physical infrastructure that supports reproductivity are not there. Agriculture, for example, manufacturing, for example. So these are deeper economic issues that we believe the government needs to focus on rather than just GDP. Now, the second point, what are the indicators that you are focusing on? For the first time, Nigeria is including illicit activities as part of economic activity, prostitution, drug trafficking. I mean, this is shocking. Now, just to boost the GDP, they are now included. Now, as strange as it may sound, it's actually not a completely weird thing. That's what statisticians do, right? The United Nations Statistical Commission actually recognized that those are economic activities, and the system of national accounting, you can actually include those things. But the question is, for Nigeria, there are two issues here. One, are we now normalizing prostitution? Are we now normalizing drug trafficking? Are we now normalizing human trafficking? How long will it take us before we start including Yahoo activities as part of economic activities, right? So that is the question, the ethical issue, the social concern, that the implication of including these and recognizing them as economic activities. That's one. Two, do you really have the data? How do you measure the volume of activities in prostitution, economic activity associated with prostitution? So at best you speculate. And when you speculate, what do? You just bring in numbers randomly. So the integrity of this is actually in question. So that's the point we are making.
I'm thinking about it, and you've looked at this from a broader perspective. You've looked at this from an international context. The fact that it is not just Nigeria that is questioning whether GDP is a fair and accurate way of measuring the productivity and the reality of lives of a lot of people. At the same time, when it does appear that we're doing what it is that is being done internationally, you have local criticisms of how it is that we have adopted it. What would you have had government do instead?
Number one, government ought to have looked at, it's okay to have the GDP numbers, but the fundamental question that the government will have asked is, how does this reflect on the life of the majority? Are we doing enough? Because one thing, I will come back to that. One dangerous thing about this GDP game is also that it's also a measure of debt to GDP ratio, and to also give you the impression, the room that you can still borrow. And
we saw the National Assembly approve a loan for the president, the executive arm of government.
There we go.
Just this week.
There we go. So it creates this room for all kind of behaviors. The fiscal discipline that is required to actually boost the economy, to actually invest in the right sectors that can increase real productivity, not prostitution, real productivity that impact on the lives of the people. This government is not doing it. We keep talking about food security, and that's one of the basis on which they want to take the loan. What does that really mean? You know, we talk about agricultural value chain and all that. What do you really see in that regard? So what we expect is that this government will actually focus on those things that can boost real productivity, not only in the larger term, yeah, they're including modular refineries as part of the new industries, but the majority of the people are still unemployed. Youth unemployment hasn't gone down. Instead, it's increasing every day. We are producing about 250,000 graduates every year. You know? That's a problem, like every government. And you have served in government as a minister. Yes. As Minister of, I think, was Youth and Sports, yes. And that was one hell of a job that you had, in the sense that, you know, how do you engage young people? So we've had this youth bulge now for a long time, which we have identified, and it's been how do we engage our young people productively? And we've seen that, you know, the problems that bedevil us economically speaking, they seem to have piled on from administration to administration. So for instance, in the Jonathan administration, I think that was when you served, you know, he attempted, there were already projections as to where we were and what will happen if we did not take away fuel subsidy. And we saw the president try to remove, as a matter of fact, he did remove fuel subsidy, but after massive protests, incidentally, also instigated by people who are currently in government today, you know, he had to reinstate fuel subsidy, well, with some modifications, with the attempt to also save for the rainy day through the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Now, all of these things have not quite materialized how it was envisaged. People have thought, okay, in the next 8 years of the Buhari administration, maybe we would have seen a removal, but there was a delay, and then we're where we are. This government came in, and the first thing it did was remove fuel subsidy, which a lot of people will say had been long anticipated or ought to have been done a long time before now. But not doing it when we ought to have done it, when we had room for maneuver, will certainly have consequences on the economy. So are you surprised, or will you say it is a little hypocritical for people to cry foul, especially amongst politicians who know the, will I say, the economic trajectory we've been on for a while, to say, you know, this government is not doing what it should do, when it knows, you know, that there is very little room for maneuvering, given just how late we've done the things that we ought to do? I think where we are today, it's easy to look at it and say it's a cumulative consequence of where we have been coming from. When Jonathan administration attempted to remove fuel subsidy, it was responding to a particular economic crisis. Now, the Buhari administration came, then the Tinubu administration came. The most important question that we need to ask, and like I told you earlier, I'm not an economist, but common sense. The purpose of government is to improve the livelihood of the people. So when government is going to take any decision, the number one question we should ask ourselves, how will this affect the livelihood of the people? Is this going to improve the quality of life of the people? Is it going to make their life worse? Look, a prime minister, one of the best prime minister, greatest prime minister, was voted out for removing milk subsidy from school. Margaret Thatcher, you've forgotten. The French Revolution was kickstarted by lack of bread. So it's mundane issues that sometimes define the character of a government. Now, what I'm saying is that when this government, let's assume that they had no choice given the fiscal crisis that they met. When you are removing subsidy, did you plan enough for the shock that it will create to the system? That is number one. Number two, what strategy recommends that you devalue the naira at the same time that you are removing subsidy? Did you consider that the calibration of these two events or these two major actions will actually lead to an outcome that reward the people or benefit the people. I don't think this administration did that. Now, another question is this. If you know that the people are going to suffer as a result of these policies that you have adopted, and you are not able to mitigate it, you will tell the people, if we do this, we will suffer for this period, but this is the reward we will get. And I like to say, even God that said we should worship him promised us reward. But we have suffered for 2 years now. Where is the reward? Or what is the promise of reward? What do we expect to gain at the end of this suffering as it is? I want to be able to, oh, okay, they've been saving money from subsidy. The money that was being used for subsidy is going somewhere. Now, where is that money going? They say, oh, they've been giving it to states, they've been spending it on infrastructure. Then the question is, how does this affect the life of an ordinary person who has to buy petrol for 1,000 naira? Now, okay, if I buy petrol for 1,000 naira, I want to be able to walk into a hospital and get cheaper drugs or free drugs. And I say, oh, that's the saving, that's what I'm paying for. But you don't see that. The people are suffering. But government officials have convoys that are getting longer, and they are living in this opulence. Why you say people should continue to suffer? And the question we ask ourselves, one, why are we suffering? Two, for how long will we need to suffer? So we should not even try to intellectualize this. The best expert of whether this government's economic policies have worked or not is the man in Wuse Market, the man in Gbagi, and the man in Ojaba. And the verdict is that no matter the intentions of this government, and no matter how well intentioned they were in introducing those mix of policy interventions, it has not worked. Will they have the humility to back down and ask themselves what they can do differently? And there are brilliant people in this country. They can ask for help.
Now, so I was going to ask what the ADC intends to do differently. If you say that the ADC and those who are currently peopling it, you know, who are, how will I put it now, who are very aware of what the challenges have been over the years, if you say that they're not being hypocritical with their call for, or with their condemnation of what the government has done so far, what do they intend to do differently?
Well, I'm not defending anybody's motives, right? Because people have different reasons. They have their own motives. And you find them in all parties, not just the ADC. But what we are telling ourselves in the ADC is that, one, is this an opportunity for us to recalibrate, to press the reset button? We can't continue to behave as if after us, there will be no Nigeria. And that's why I'm talking about the successor generation. That's number one. Number two, you can say there are people in the ADC who just want to grab power. You can say there are people who are just doing this because they are out of power. But can we also agree that there are people who form sufficient critical mass within this new party that are willing, that are tired of being looked down upon just because we are politicians? I see it. I can encounter it every day. So when I introduce myself as a writer, people look at me and say, wow. But the moment I say I'm a politician, people begin to. So I'm tired, and there are many people who feel like that. We don't have to be ashamed to be politicians. If some people have given politics a bad name, some people have to say, look, we must give politics a good name by using it for what it should be used for, the service of the people. So what do you ask me, what would ADC do differently? ADC will play by new rules we are setting for ourselves now. ADC will be the party that is governed by its own membership. ADC will set rules that everybody, ADC is not going to have its elected officials being overlords over the party. These are the new rules we are setting for ourselves. And I'd like to give an example of the UPN in the Second Republic. If you were a UPN governor, no matter how useless you are, you know you will do free education. That happened in this country. So can we begin to look back into our own history and see what we can learn? But in terms of the immediate challenges, ADC wants to be the people that address directly what concerns Nigerians. And I don't want to sit here and give you my personal opinion. In the coming weeks, we are going to release the documents about our plans, our manifesto, our program. We are working on that already. You know, so when that comes out, I can come back here and discuss it.
All right, then we'll be looking forward to that. But just very quickly, what would you say? Because I know you already talked about local politics and how you don't want to speak to that. But we cannot dissociate you from former Senate President Bukola Saraki.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, what do you say to those who say, oh, you're in the party because he's not in the party?
I don't know what that means. I'm in the party because he's not. What does that mean?
Yes. Well, you were both in the PDP.
Yes, we were. I was with him.
He's still in the PDP.
Yes.
You were in the PDP because of him?
Yes, I was in the PDP because of him, because originally he brought me into politics. As far back as 2003, and I worked with him all through. Then I became federal minister then. So I've always been part of his political
family.
Yes.
Are you in the ADC because of him?
No. I'm in ADC because of me. I'm in ADC because of me. He's in PDP, I'm in ADC.
But would you say that there's any affiliation whatsoever with regards to your being in ADC?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not?
Absolutely not.
Do people ask you that question sometimes?
A lot.
Okay. To make sure that, Well, we have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise City this morning. We certainly will keep tabs with you with regards to the upcoming programs of the ADC. But we have to thank you once the African Democratic having also served as a former Minister of Youth and Sports in the federal government of Nigeria. Thank you so much.